Hey everyone, it's Lexi. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you the top 5 books that I read this summer. So this summer, despite being a very busy summer with getting a puppy and moving and all that stuff, I still managed to read a good amount of books. So it's not as much as I feel like I normally read, but given with how busy I was, I'm pretty proud of this. And overall, there were a lot of books that I really loved, that I really enjoyed and really stood out to me this season. So the way this video will be structured is I'll go over all the books that I ended up reading in June, July, and August. And then at the end, I'll go into more in depth about my top 5 books in no particular order. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting off in June, I first read Codename Helene by Ariel Lawhorn, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The Frozen River, also by Ariel Lawhorn, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. And The Serpent in the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Moving on to August, I first read The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Briar Club by Kate Quinn, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. And finally, moving on to August, I first read A Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Just for the Summer, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And lastly, The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, which I also gave a 4 out of 5 stars. So first up, I have Codename Helene by Ariel Lawhorn, and I wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did. It really kind of took me by surprise, and I think for whatever reason, I've just really gotten out of reading historical fiction. It used to be primarily what I would read in combination with murder mysteries, and even though I could still continue to read murder mysteries, I feel like I've kind of fallen off reading a lot of historical fiction within the last few years. So I really was excited to dive back into kind of a book that was very much like the bread and butter of what I really would be reading, and this one really took me by surprise. And the fact that it is inspired by or based off of a real woman's life, it really made it really compelling. So we follow this woman and we follow her journey growing up in France, where she ends up, we get kind of 2 storylines essentially. We have her falling in love, kind of the storyline of her falling in love, getting married, and then kind of the buildup of World War II and the Nazi occupation in France at that time. And then we also follow her later on in the war, where she is kind of working undercover, where she is parachuted into France to help the resistance, and we kind of get back and forth between the 2 storylines. I really love this. This thing, I think, was definitely a standout. I think it is definitely on par with a lot of the great historical fictions that are very popular, like The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I think this one is very comparable in terms of it being compelling, emotional, but also featuring very strong female leads. I really loved how the author really made the main character super spunky, and she really had to stand her own with these men. And a lot of some of the quotes that are kind of interwoven here, some of the things that actually happened, were inspired by her biography and integrated kind of real historical events into the story. So although there was some dramatization in terms of some plot points or anything here or there, the author did try to stay as true to the story as possible, which I really enjoyed. And again, this one kind of, like I said, brought me back to my roots with reading and made me kind of re-fall in love again with historical fiction. And it was so good that I really liked this writing, so I wanted to pick up the author's next book, which was The Frozen River, which I really enjoyed, but I did like Codename Helene a little bit more. But I think if you're looking for a really kind of fast-paced, suspenseful historical fiction, I think this is the perfect book to read. I haven't heard very many people talk about it, but it definitely was a standout for me. Next up, I have The Serpent in the Wings of Night and The Ash and the Star-Cursed King. And this was one that took me by surprise. It was one that I've heard things about here online, but I was a little bit skeptical. But I ended up picking these up from the library, and I really ended up enjoying them. I think if you really love ACOTAR, I think you will like this. There's a lot of similar themes and tropes that are present in this one that I think I liked. It was not a perfect like fantastical read. Like, I didn't think it was anything that blew me away, but I had a really good time reading it, and I still think, even though it wasn't a spectacular groundbreaking book, you can still really enjoy them. So this one, I really enjoyed it. It follows a human who grows up in this fantastical world where her adopted father is head of this like vampire kingdom essentially, and she is in a very interesting position because she still wants to kind of make her father proud, but she also really hates the vampires, and so she ends up becoming involved within this competition where if she wins, she's granted one wish by a goddess, and so she is very determined to win this competition in order to kind of get this wish. But I think it's a really interesting setup, especially with the main character really hating vampires and kind of disliking them, which I thought was a very interesting concept. I think you just get like just enough world building to keep you entertained, and I feel like the second book did a better job of it kind of expanding that world. So it definitely improved from the second one. I did enjoy the second one a little bit more. I thought it was a little bit better. You can tell the author became more comfortable writing with like a fantasy like this. And there is romance. There are some things that I did find annoying with it, because it would be like the main character would kind of switch between, oh my god, I hate this guy, to oh my god, this guy is so hot, and it kind of flip-flopped a lot, which was a little bit annoying and kind of made me roll my eyes. But I still really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I especially really loved the ending of the first book, and like I really loved the second one. So yeah, like I said, this is definitely a new series. I have the third book pre-ordered ready to go, but it was just a fun, fantastical read. Next, I have A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This is a book that I got from the library, and I ended up really loving it. I only have read Nettle and Bone from her. My fiance's read, I think, all of her books now, and he said he really also enjoyed this one as well. But it is a fairy tale retelling of the Goose Girl, I think is what the fairy tale is. But it follows this girl who is growing up with her mother, who's a sorceress, and the mother is very abusive towards her. She forces her to be obedient, where it's basically like Ella Enchanted, where she kind of has to obey and everything her mother is forcing her to do. And her mother's kind of like a swindler, so when her benefactor essentially breaks up with her, she has to go find someone else to kind of marry so that they can be well off, and it kind of goes off from there. This one I really enjoyed. I think there were some pacing issues in the middle, but I really loved the beginning and I really loved the ending. It was definitely a lot of fun, and you get also another perspective that's interwoven here, but it was definitely a lot of fun. I really love kind of this eerie fairy tale setting that is a little bit darker. I would say it's like slightly cozy, but like not really cozy. There's definitely some darker aspects in here, but I feel like because it was that fairy tale retelling, there was kind of that sense of warmth that I really enjoyed. I really love seeing the growth of the main character, especially in this, where she kind of really learns to find her own. And there's also a sense of found family, which I really enjoyed as well. So this one was nice too, because it was a little bit on the shorter end. But yeah, definitely really love this, and I had to pick up my own copy too, because that's how much I loved it, because I got this one from the library and I was like, I need to get a physical copy of this one, because definitely I can see myself rereading this, you know, year down the line. Next, I have Just for the Summer, and this is one that took me by surprise. August was basically the month of where I got all of my library holds in at once. So I got A Sorceress Comes to Call, Just for the Summer, and then the next book that I will be talking about in this lineup, which you guys probably can already guess what it is. But this is one that I've heard really positive things about. I've heard it kind of compared to Emily Henry, where it is a romance, but also that also integrates a lot of, you know, darker, more difficult subject matter. And so I kind of went in just kind of expecting a fun rom-com, and I was really surprised by the kind of, you know, integration of like mental health and all these other things that were kind of interwoven into it to make it a little bit more serious. But it follows two people who have basically this curse where they end up breaking with someone, and then immediately the next person that their ex dates is the person that they will marry. So they think that in order to break this curse is that if they date themselves, they'll break this curse. So they kind of start out with like almost a fake dating, but obviously you can see it kind of leads to something more. I really love the romance in here. I thought it was really interesting because we do get two perspectives, and I really enjoyed just seeing the kind of how these people kind of started out, you know, initially kind of just being interested in each other, and how it was seeing that grow and evolve into something something more. There were some like instances where, especially with the guy's family, there's some situation going on with this guy's family that I don't want to spoil, but it felt really unrealistic and kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit. Like, it didn't feel something that was like really realistic or believable. But besides that, I really loved the romance. I thought it did a really good job at integrating like mental health and also like traumatic experiences as a child and how that can impact you as an adult. I thought that was really well done, and I really love the ending on this one as well. So I do think there are other parts. This is like a companion series, so I think there are other parts that are integrated into this that I think you can kind of read other characters that pop up in here have already been previously written about. So definitely I think this is one that I will kind of make my way through, but I really enjoyed it. I think it is comparable to Emily Henry. I think I do like Emily Henry. I really loved Funny Story and Happy Place. I think those are my favorite. And this is kind of on par with that. So I think if you really love Emily Henry, I think this one will be, you know, a fun read as well. And it was a good way to kind of round out the summer with this nice kind of romance. And lastly, I have The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This again was my library hold that all came in at the same time, so it was a mad dash to read everything. But I've read Long Bright River, I think that's what the title is, like kind of during COVID, like when it first came out, and I really enjoyed it, and there was a lot of hype around this book. I feel like this book was like everywhere for like Barnes & Noble. It was like a very big release, so I was really curious to see how I felt about this, and I really enjoyed it. It kind of takes place in the 70s at a summer camp where they wake up one day and find that Barbara, one of the kind of camp people, like the camp kids, ends up disappearing. And it is a little bit eerie because her brother disappeared like 15 years prior, and so there's a lot of, not only does her disappearance kind of lead to a lot of unanswered questions, but it also kind of ties in with her brother's disappearance from 15 years ago. And we get kind of flashbacks over the span, I would say, of like 20 years or so, where you're following different perspectives and everything. This is kind of very similar to Long Bright River, where we kind of get background information that doesn't seem relevant, but it definitely ties in with the storyline. And I really loved it. I remember getting towards the end and like, I need to read, I need to know what happened. Like, I want to know what is this mystery, and I really enjoyed it. I think the author does a really good job at building that suspense and integrating a lot of the different perspectives and backgrounds to really kind of build up that suspense and really make it a page turner, which I really enjoyed. I felt like she did the same thing with Long Bright River. I think I do like Long Bright River a little bit more, but this one was still really good, as you can tell, because it's one of my favorites. I do think it kind of lost some of its, I feel like the beginning and the end were really great, but I feel like the middle, there were some times where it kind of lost its focus, it lost its momentum, and I felt like the pacing really slowed down. I think that was my biggest complaint. I think like some parts in the middle could be either removed entirely or condensed. I felt like it just kind of dragged on a little bit in the middle, but I really loved kind of that explosive ending, and it was definitely a joy to read. So yeah, if you're looking for like a fun, like, again, this is kind of like a summer camp, end of summer read that I think you could kind of read in like September and the fall as well. I think this is a great book. It's definitely worth all the hype. I think Long Bright River just has an edge on it slightly, but it was definitely a joy to read. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite reads were of this summer and all that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.